FireChick561 has commented on our chat here and says, armed teachers who are trained and comfortable doing so. But what about mace? Yeah, she used to work as a meter reader and a little spray can and could stop a big German Shepherd. That's kind of cool. But here's something that she brings up. A lot of people just say, "Hey, let's arm all the teachers." You can't do that. Not every one of them is mentally or fit at all to do so. However, maybe train some teachers. And another possible solution. We talk about veterans who could use employment coming back from overseas. Well, what about hiring a couple of veterans to help secure schools? The money's there. You don't have to raise taxes. You might as well take the money out of these woke programs, these CRT inducing indoctrination sessions, and maybe indoctrination departments that they've been spending so much money on, honest taxpayers' money, and maybe employ veterans and keep kids safe at the same time. Thoughts? Let's start with Pete.
I would agree, and I would simply use the example. If you recall, right after the attack on September 11th, one of the responses was pilots of aircraft could apply, commercial aircraft could apply to the, I guess the FAA initially, and they'd go through a certification process, and they would carry pistols on the airplane. And I had a couple of friends who were commercial airline pilots, and they did the same thing. And it was the exact same idea as our listener just brought up. Is that there are people out there who are comfortable handling firearms, and they've had experience, and there was a certification process. They didn't just all of a sudden show up the next day carrying a couple of six shooters strapped to their hips. They went through a process. They were given special licenses, and they began carrying weapons on board the airplane. And there's no reason why you can't do the exact same thing at a school. There are teachers who are veterans. There are people who are comfortable carrying weapons. There are certainly enough room in the budgets of our schools today, given the amount of money we're actually spending on education. We spend almost twice as much on education in the United States, public and private, as we do on defense. It is a tremendous amount of money. So certainly there is money around to have one or two folks in a school who are certified, who've trained, they've been inspected, they've had a physical, they've had a mental evaluation, they've actually had to qualify with the weapon. This isn't hard. We've done this before in other scenarios. Why can't we do this? I agree. Absolutely agree.
Well, Pete, I hate to throw some rain on your parade, but last time I checked, criminals don't go through all that training and certification with their guns, do they? I mean, they don't.
Right.
So I'm with you, but I'm not. So it's kind of like, let's just arm people who have a basic qualification. You know this from Virginia. For Virginia to get your concealed carry, all you need is a DD-214.
Right.
Great. And I think that's where we allow the other side to put all these regulations on us. And as far as I'm concerned, there's this retired federal officer program. You got to go through certification. So yeah, nonsense.
But Tony, my only point is I would give it up to each school board or each state, whoever they want to do it. But that's the answer here.
Well, I know it's the answer, but I'm just saying the school boards who don't want to do it will overly regulate and make it impossible. That's my issue.
I'm going to agree with both of you and say that maybe if some of those folks are trained well and the shooter's not trained too well, let's make sure that the good guys can hit what they're shooting at.
So that's part of it. So let me go back to my point. This all comes down, and I think at the core of what Pete is saying, it's leadership. There are people who can implement a process which is realistic, achievable, and rapid that can be put across the board in. And I'm not for the federalization of this, because if you federalize something, one size does not fit all. But I do believe there's best practices. So let me walk through my logic chain on this. So I believe fundamentally both mass shooting events resulted from a lack of leadership. In the New York incident, it was a lack of leadership on fundamental monitoring of mental health by someone who was clearly troubled And despite all the things that are put in place, nobody seemed to be able to take decisive action. And some of that happened in Texas too. But that's an issue of political leadership that people who have done all these laws, put all these safeties in place, didn't work. They never do, apparently, right? I mean, they never seem to work. Yeah, he was on our radar, we knew it, but we didn't do anything. So it's fundamentally leadership. And I think so much of what is to lead is that is often understand facts are. Those who oppose common sense will use all sorts of rhetoric to prevent that. And speaking of rhetoric, let's go to the big cities where rhetoric is king, where you've seen most of the major crime. And I've used this example before in other interviews. Chicago last year suffered a mass shooting per week. 15 people died. 797 people died last year. That's 15 a week. So you had a mass shooting per week in Chicago. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And by the way, 3,000 were shot. That's just the people who died. So when you look at the, and nobody cares. Why do they not care? Because it's policy. It's policy to not care. All these things that have just been talked about, they don't matter because for the political class in these larger cities who have implemented gun control laws, they're perfectly fine with this because it creates conditions for them, the politicians, to be successful. So nobody on the progressive side wants to change the direction of things for them because it benefits them politically, yet people die because fundamentally they don't care. Just a little sidebar here. I don't want to get into some issues which will get us in trouble, but there are other things which blow people's lungs out, and they have to do with babies. Just saying. I don't want to get into that, but I'm just saying there's things which really do blow people's lungs out. Otherwise, it's propaganda. So to Pete's point, if you really want to solve this, there are best practices available for people to actually look at if you're being unemotional and non-political. I always reference Sheriff Dave Decatur. When Sheriff Decatur was faced with the challenge of finding a way to put officers into schools as resource officers to basically secure the schools, which, by the way, Joe Biden apparently is not for. I don't know if you heard Jean-Luc Marie, whatever her name is, the new spokesman, yesterday said Biden is not for securing schools. Okay, it says a lot. But when faced with this, when Sheriff Decatur had to do this, he did exactly what Pete proposed. He had a program where they said, hey, are you a veteran? Do you have prior experience with firearms? Come apply. Let's interview you. And then let's figure out a way to get these veterans who have experience with firearms trained to a level of proficiency that can be effective in protecting the school, thereby not diminishing the number of sworn officers to do other legitimate law enforcement activities, yet expanding his base of resources to the point necessary to protect schools. See, there's ways of doing this without having to change a lot of laws. It's all about political will and leadership.
Gypsy Soul agrees with you too, Tony. She writes this down about the veterans. It's on our super chat. You want to add something to that? Please do so. We're going to inject that into the conversation here. And if you haven't yet, please hit the big red button, not the red beg button. What is wrong with me today? Hit the big red button that says subscribe, and you'll find out when we're going to have these live chats in the future. You'll be forewarned, and you can pass the information along. Hope you're enjoying this so far. It'll be replayed in its entirety on our Patreon channel. Also, we'll have clips of it all over YouTube the next week. However, I do want to take one of your points, Tony. People don't care because unless it makes big news and it's sexy and politicians can take advantage of it, they aren't going to bother with it, or they're going to let it go down the old memory hole. In fact, one of the interesting memes that I've been seeing flying around are people, the keyboard warriors passing around as their statuses or tweets, was this new CDC study that says that that mass shootings or gun violence is now the leading cause of death of adolescents in the U.S. However, peel a few layers back, the CDC considers these adolescents people aged 1 through 19. Now, I'm not saying that these school shootings don't need to be stopped, and it's not a tragedy. It's very important to make sure that schools are more secure. But if you're going to make a political point and add the plethora of gang violence using while using illegal guns, shooting young people who are in gangs age 14 through 19, to make that same point, or at least the point to say, hey, we got to take guns out of people's hands, that I believe is also reprehensible.
So, Chris, let me get this straight. They're worried about kids who are essentially from 1 to 18, but they don't care about babies being murdered, right? Am I reading that 19. Correctly?
It was 19.
So, but they don't care about the babies who are about to be born. It's just about once they're out, right? I mean, that's what they're saying here, because I just want to make sure that everybody is steely-eyed on this, because, boy, I hate to divert, but I'm gonna, because I'm the president. I guess I can do that.
Yes, you can.
The Alito decision, which is upcoming, relating to the Supreme Court regarding abortion. Let me put this in perspective. So the whole issue that came to the Supreme Court was a heartbeat issue. Bennett, right? It was I think Mississippi law. Pete, you guys track this better than I do. I think it was a Mississippi law which basically said if the baby has a heartbeat, you can't abort it, right? I think that's the principle. So the left is fighting this. And they're all upset because somehow if a baby has a heartbeat, they still want to kill it. But if you make it out, we're really worried all of a sudden. Does anybody besides me see that that's kind of like insane? So you don't, I mean,
Veritas, remember, there's money to be made, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, either you stand for your principles and life is valuable no matter what, or you don't. So, I mean, I hate to throw that monkey wrench into the ring, but there you go. So
that's what live streams are all about.
I'll comment on that. I think you make a really great point. I want to combine that point with some points that I think Bill was making earlier. Look, our nation is in decline. We're in decline for a whole, host of reasons. People have different opinions. We've turned away from God in many ways.
Yeah.
Okay. You turn away from God. You turn away from the value of life. Right. When you look at thou shalt not kill, what you're talking about, if you look at the definition of kill in the Bible, what it really means is innocent life, not wars and, all this stuff, innocent life.
Right.
Now,
thou shalt not murder is what what it should say.
Exactly. That's the, you look at the definition of that, right. And what they meant in the context of that, what was meant by thou shalt not kill. Innocent life. So if you don't value life, right? If life is just, a commodity, right? If we're all, cattle, some people get killed, some people make it, it's hit or miss, right? Then what you do is you use the stuff that garners the most emotion to try and shape policy, right? You use it diabolically to try and shape policy to get some outcome that you want. It's really not related to what just happened per se. It's only related in that you think you can use it to shape some policy and get what you want. Okay. But again, to me, that's not focusing on the mission. The
right.
thing that everybody can agree on here. And I'm with you, Tony. I'm completely pro-life. I don't like.
I'm just trying to point out the complete disparity in their position.
There's a disparity. There's a complete disparity. But if you look at it now, okay, these are children, okay, that are born. They have names. They have parents. They have aunts and uncles and people that love them, okay. And if we don't have a value on life, I think that a lot of this goes back to what Bill said earlier with action, right? Taking action. Okay. Mm-hmm. I couldn't imagine this happening 2 or 3 decades ago. Okay. Where you'd have 19 cops in the hallway, what it would be a different story. It would be, four cops shot while entering, heroically before they had the shields and, took out the shooter. And thank God they did, because there was 3 kids that were saved by paramedics immediately afterward who would have bled out if it would have taken another 5 or 10 minutes. And they sat there for an hour. I think this goes back to a societal problem. And it all goes back to turning away from God. If we get back to our fundamentals, if we get back to, what this nation was founded on, if we start loving one another as Americans, respecting one another as Americans, which includes trusting, loving, and respecting others' rights. Okay, not using, some, legal maneuvers and legal tactics to take guns away or to take any rights away from people who have done nothing, who haven't gone through, any sort of due process. So anyway,
if I can jump in there, Bennett, I'd like to focus on a group that is abused, that isn't respected. They aren't given their due rights, and that's the poor people of cities like Baltimore and Chicago. If you take a hard look at the numbers here, there's about 1.5 guns per person in the United States. And if you take a look at the overall crime rate across the United States, averaged out, it's really remarkably low. But if you go to places like Chicago or Baltimore, particularly the poorer sections of Chicago and Baltimore, you'll find that gun ownership, legal gun ownership, is, and that's what we were talking about before, 1.5 guns per person, legal gun ownership across the United States. But if you go to a place like downtown Chicago or downtown Baltimore, where the law has been torqued around like a pretzel, and it is virtually impossible for someone who does not have the means to jump through all the hoops,
right,
to own a pistol. In Baltimore, I believe the number right now is there is 1 pistol for every 40 people. And in Chicago, it's 1 in 60. I may have those numbers switched. But the point is that essentially, legally speaking, the poor people of Chicago and Baltimore are unarmed. And it is probably worth pointing out once again that the vast majority of the firearms laws of the United States were constructed over the last 80 to 90 years, began on a movement to ensure that the poor of this country, particularly the blacks and the Hispanics, were unarmed. What we're seeing right now is a carrying on of that horrible tradition.
Thank you for watching this clip of Thought to Action Live, presented by the Herb London Center for Policy Research. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the big red bell for updates so you know when we're putting anything out. Also, check out our Teespring store and our website, londoncenter.org. The Teespring store has all sorts of pretty cool stuff we put out there. We have new t-shirt designs coming out soon and much more. The link is in our description. You can watch our full live stream on our Patreon channel, patreon.com/thoughttoaction. That's patreon.com/thoughttoaction. Once again, that link is also in the description. Also, as a member of our Patreon page, you can see sneak previews of our programs, watch them before anybody else. Exclusive content will be available, and you'll have access to our full Ask Us Anything sessions where we answer your questions. Once again, thank you very much for watching this clip of our live stream. Stay informed and make your day a great one.